Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
It's strange, thinking back on all of it now, how it unraveled so quickly, so quietly. Kathy and I had been married for 12 years. I thought we were solid. Sure, my work was demanding, especially after Dad passed and I was thrust into running the construction business. But I always figured Kathy understood. We'd built a life together, had Maria, and despite the long hours and the constant travel, I thought I was doing right by them both. I was wrong. Coming home early that day without warning, I walked into a different life than the one I thought I had. Kathy wasn't just cheating. She was regularly sleeping with her boss, Ben. Maybe the fact that we shared the same name made it worse somehow, like I was being replaced by some alternate version of myself. The shock of it was dull, though. I'd been so consumed by work that when I found out, it didn't hit me like I expected it would. Maybe I'd seen it coming but didn't want to admit it. What hit harder was losing Maria. The divorce was quick, cleaner than most, thanks to the prenuptial. I didn't lose my assets, the company, or the legacy my father left me, but I lost custody of my daughter. That was the real price I paid. And Kathy, she married Ben, the second one, and settled into a different life. They weren't rich by my standards, but they did all right. For a while, things seemed civil between us, until Kathy made it her mission to sever the last thread connecting me to Maria. She enrolled Maria in every activity she could think of, packing her schedule so tightly that it became impossible for me to spend time with her without pulling her out of something. And every time I did, Kathy was on my case, telling me I was being selfish, that I wasn't thinking about Maria's future. I fought for a while. I tried to see her, to maintain some connection, but eventually, I gave up. I couldn't keep playing the villain in Kathy's narrative. So, I backed out. I sent a letter through my attorney, putting the ball in Kathy's court. I told her that I would be available for visitation whenever they called me, but I wouldn't be the one to initiate it anymore. I wanted my 4 days a month with Maria, but I didn't want to keep fighting for them. Over time, those 4 days turned into one, and then into nothing at all. In the last 4 years, I've seen Maria only a handful of times. She's grown up now, turned 18, and when that happened, I stopped paying child support. I didn't have to, but it felt pointless. She had made her choice. Maria wasn't interested in having a relationship with me. She was her mother's daughter, through and through. She'd written me off long before that. None of her friends knew who I was, and when she got engaged, I didn't even know the young man's name until the wedding invitations arrived in the mail. I stood there at the door, staring at Maria as if I hadn't seen her in years, because, really, I hadn't. She looked different, grown up, but I could still see glimpses of the little girl I used to know. She held out the invitation, a wedding card with her name on it, and for a split second, I felt this strange mix of pride and pain. My daughter, getting married. But that joy was fleeting. I told her I'd be there. Of course, I would. Despite everything, I was still her father. But when I asked if I was supposed to walk her down the aisle, her response hit me harder than I expected. In the most casual, matter-of-fact way, she said she wanted her pops to walk her, not her dad. Pops, not her dad. I'm not even sure how I kept my face from showing it, but inside, that hurt like hell. That word, pops, felt like the final confirmation that I was no longer part of her life in any meaningful way. Ben, her mother's husband, was her pops, the man who filled the role I'd been forced to abandon. I guess it was inevitable, but still, hearing it from her lips, so casually, as if it was the most natural thing in the world, it was like a punch to the gut. I didn't argue. What could I say? I just nodded, told her I understood, and watched as she left. She wasn't cruel about it, not intentionally. She probably didn't even realize what it did to me. But last night was far from peaceful. I tossed and turned, replaying that moment over and over. She didn't want her dad to walk her down the aisle. I tried to remind myself that I'd made my choices, and maybe I had to live with the consequences. But that didn't make it any easier. For all the hard work, the success I built, the life I constructed after the divorce, it felt like I'd failed in the one thing that mattered most. And now, I had to face the reality that my role in Maria's life had been reduced to a distant memory, a name on an invitation. I'll be at that wedding, but I'll be sitting in the audience, watching another man walk my daughter down the aisle, wondering how things got so far off course. But then, the next morning when I got up, I decided to do something that I never thought about in the last 10 years, turn into a vengeful monster. I can't tell you here that when a very rich man makes up his mind to screw up the lives for a not-so-rich man, he can generally do it, especially if the very rich man has nothing to lose. I called in my lawyer and asked him to set up a company within the next week which would run a chain of flower shops, the business that Ben II was in, and open a flurry of shops right next to each and every shop he owned. I also instructed him to keep the prices of the flowers exactly half of what Ben's shop was offering. I told him that I wanted all the shops open by mid-next week. Then I called my interior decoration department head and my PR division head and asked them to step up on this. I wanted the shops to look dazzling, and I wanted the media blitzkrieg to be unprecedented. Then I called my security division chief and asked him to create a dossier on the groom-to-be in the next 24 hours. I asked my accountants for the name of the bank where the child support checks were deposited. It was likely that Ben had his business account with them too. A few phone calls later I knew that Ben had taken a large advance on his account just a few days prior. It was to facilitate the marriage of my former daughter, no doubt. That would mean that he would not be able to pump in any new cash into his business anytime soon. I called my HR division and asked them to poach the best employees of Ben's shops at double their current salaries. Ben was going to be a very busy man in the next few days. The new company was established in the name of a friend of mine from Nevada, and its headquarters was registered in Nevada as well. Nobody would be able to tie the company with me without looking deep, something that Ben will be too busy to do. The groom-to-be was a nice young man with a huge student loan on his head. He worked as a realtor and had, in the past, handled a few of my construction sites as well. I did not want to ruin the life of Maria. Ben was off balance the very first day of the opening of my new shops. He suddenly was short-staffed and, more importantly, short on customers. Openings of my shops with one major Hollywood star attending each opening was all over page 3 of all newspapers. It was 3 days into the game that the shit hit the fan. I woke up in the morning to find my ex-wife and my former daughter at my doorsteps. "What have you done?" shouted Kathy as soon as she entered the house. I could see that Maria was also looking very glum. "What are you talking about?" I said that I would come to the wedding. I did nothing to upset Maria. I actually had no clue what she was talking about, so I played dumb. "You know what I am talking about, you scumsucker. Why did you open up a chain of shops right next to Ben's? Why are you selling flowers at half the price of what it costs for you to buy them? What shops are you talking about?" "The shops that you opened in the name of that no-good pauper friend of yours, Steve. You did not think I would remember the bum? He is an orthodontist, and at that too a bad one. Why are you doing this after 10 years of not caring at all?" I knew the game was up, but I had not done anything illegal yet. I decided to show my fangs. And why should that concern you? I have a right to open any business I feel like and see at any prices I feel like. In fact, this company is one of my charity foundations where I am offering the public flowers at cheaper rates so that they can show love and respect for those they care about. If you can find anything illegal in this, sue me. Maria spoke for the first time. Pops had a heart attack in the morning. The way things are moving, he would be out of business in the next 1 month. You have taken everything away from him because you have money. I hate you. How could you do this him? You know Mom and I depend on him for support. I turned to her and said, I was not angry anymore. After all these years of silence and hurt, I was feeling sad for the first time. Truly spoken. I have money and I have taken away his business from him, but tell me, how is it any different from what he did? Why did you not grow up to hate him? Pop has never done a bad thing in his whole life. She shot back. No, he has never done a bad thing in his whole life. When he slept with my wife, he was doing something every morally upright man does. You say that I have money and he does not, and I am using it to take his business away. He had time and I did not, and he used it to take my wife and my daughter away from me. How is that different? But of course, what I am doing is beyond disgust, and what he did was the thing sainthood is made for. You say you and your mom depended on him, and I took that away from you, and you hate me for it. I depended on my wife at a time when my father had died and more than 1,200 employees were looking at me, and he took her away from me. Why don't you hate your pop for it? Maria looked away. Why do you bring this up after 10 years? Kathy asked, more politely now. Because I am tired of being the bad guy for nothing. If I am going to be painted as a villain, I bloody well will be one. I should have fought tooth and nail for Maria instead of thinking that you would best buy her. I should have raised hell when you denied me chances to meet and see my only reason to smile, my daughter. Instead, I backed down and thought that it was best if I did not destroy her childhood by making life difficult for you. I should have ruined the scumsucker who cucked me so that he would be on the roads, and you would have no choice but to stay with me and keep my Maria with me. I should have filed for full custody when you refused to let me take Maria with me on that holiday to France, even though it was turned to spend summer holiday with her. I looked at her with the disgust I was feeling for her at this time. Maria spoke up. You never had the time for me. I was starved for affection. After a while, it became clear to me that you had divorced me as well, along with Mom, and it was only then I took Pop as a father and pushed you out of my mind. I met you at times because Mom told me that if I refused to meet you, there would be legal repercussions. She said you would file a case against her. I only met you out of fear, not out of love. Wait a minute. I asked her to hold on while I called up my attorney. I asked him to fax me the letter that I had sent to Kathy so many years ago. Within the next 15 minutes, I had a faxed copy of the letter and also the receipt with Kathy's signature on it. Read this and tell me if I did not have the time for you. I also have recording of the phone calls that made to your mom to request time to meet with you and being brushed off. I must have hundreds of such call and a few calls where you have rudely asked me not to call you about fixing up time. Rather you mom, and that hurt. What was my mistake in all this? My only mistake was that my father died, and then I had to run a company which I had no clue how to do. I was inexperienced and I did it because 1,200 people worked in that company and they depended on me to keep the company afloat. I did spend a lot of time away from the two of you, but it was to bring home the money that we needed to live. You of all people, Maria, have no reason to be bitter about it. In the last 10 years, I have not paid any alimony to your mom, but I have made you go to the best school, the best college, and have all the best amenities that you could think of. Do you think I was unaware that you were spending a lot of your money on you mom and pops? You stole money from me and gave it to them. That is correct. It was stealing. The credit card I gave you was for your expenditure on the campus, and you regularly bought flight tickets for your mom and pops to visit you on that card, and you refused to see me the one time I was in town. How do you think I felt at that time? I was pissed off, bloody pissed off, but I kept quiet because I gave you the card to keep you happy. If being near your mom and pops made you happy, so be it. I was seething with anger now. After reading the letter, Maria was looking at her mother with the same anger that was directed to me some time ago. I should not ruin your pops maybe, but I will. I will bring him down with one thing that I have, and he does not. After all, he brought my world crashing down with what he had. If now, your mom wants to have a husband who has money, she is most welcome to marry me after divorcing the a-hole. She will not be loved, but she will have time and money from me. I do need companionship. What kind of person do you think I am? Snapped Kathy. The kind of person who deserts her husband and sleeps around with another man because one facet of her life is unfulfilled. It is a man's job to bring two things to his wife, money and his time. I was bringing money and not my time, and you deserted me. Now, in coming days he will be so poor that he will be looking for money to buy a pot to piss in. So, he will neither give you money nor time. Will you be able to live with it? Is your love for a cuck scumsucker who slept with a married woman greater than the love you had for a hard-working man who fathered your child? Kathy finally lost, and there was no fight left in her. Just then Maria spoke up. Dad, do you have it in you to let me move in with you? I cannot go back to live with people who took my dad away from me. If you do not agree to let me move in, I will move into a motel and then find a place to stay. I guess my marriage is not going to go through. I will not walk down the aisle in a marriage ceremony paid for by two lying individuals. I do not know if my relation with Jake will survive after this, but I hope he loves me enough to look past this. Kathy was openly crying now. Maria was looking at me with tears in her eyes, not sure of what my decision would be. Maria, you can move in right now, if you feel like. I am sure that you have things at your mom's that you would like to bring. Go and bring them now, while I talk to your mom. After Maria left, I turned towards Kathy. She had calmed down by now and was looking clueless. She finally spoke up. Have you hated me so much? Did you give me a reason not to? I only wanted to have a normal life for me and my daughter. Our daughter, I corrected her. You forgot in your quest for normalcy that it is not normal for a father to cry himself to sleep at night because his daughter thinks he is a heartless scumsucker. You forgot it is not normal for a husband to go to sleep thinking that he has failed his wife. It is not normal for a husband to walk in on his naked wife getting screwed by her boss. Where was anything normal in your so-called normal life for me? You screwed me up so bad that I have not had a single meaningful relationship in 10 years. I guess I was being so selfish that I did not see how much hurt I was causing you. You are still being selfish, letting yourself off so easily. The equation had 4 people, me, you, Maria, and Ben. Ben has had a heart attack. Maria has just lost all that she has believed in for the last 10 years. I have been reduced to a sadist, and you are stuck with a husband with no health, no wealth, and no time for you. I see that you have successfully destroyed 4 lives. I looked hard at her. But now you have one chance to make things right for Maria, provided you can think of someone beside yourself. Anything to make my baby happy. I will take over all the expenses for the marriage so that she goes ahead with the marriage. My only condition is that on the day of her marriage, you will not be in town. If you can do it, I will make things right for Maria. She started crying and nodded her head. I am ready to do anything for Maria. I should have felt lousy for being such an a-hole, but I was just happy. I could see that the rest of her life was going to be miserable. I had always wanted to start a European branch, and there was a construction company in Germany up for sale. I was sure that Jake would be an ideal candidate for being my eyes and ears there. I've come this far, haven't I? Torn their lives apart piece by piece. Ben's gone. Took his life 5 years after Maria's wedding. I remember the news hitting me, but it barely registered. I felt worse when I lost a goldfish as a kid. Kathy's hanging on by a thread now, scraping by on food stamps after I got her fired from 3 jobs. She knows I'm not letting her off the hook. Not after everything. And now she's in this pit. She knows there's no way out, except one. From what I hear, she's saved just enough to buy a gun. A few more weeks, maybe she'll have enough for the bullet too. Then it's only a matter of time. I wonder if she thinks about it every night, about how much more of this she can take. And here I am, wondering if I should stop. Should I be charitable? Should I let her live, if you can even call what she's doing living? Part of me knows I could, if I wanted. I could back off, stop grinding her into the dirt. But the other part of me, it's still hungry. Still feels like there's something left to take from her. I thought revenge would feel different. I thought once Ben was gone, once I'd watched Kathy's life fall apart, I'd feel something more than this. Satisfaction? Closure? I don't know. But what I do know is, I've won. If that's what you call it. I've taken everything from her, and yet I still feel that bitterness sitting inside me. So, should I stop? Should I let her buy that gun and put an end to it? Or should I finally let go? I've carried this hate for so long. I'm not sure what's left of me without it. Maybe I'm too far gone to stop. Or maybe letting go is the only way to find some peace for myself. But can I even do that after everything? I don't know. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
Hi, I am Kevin Wallace, 38, a successful stock trader, a very successful writer of American Western frontier novels, and an occasional inventor. I have been divorced from Laura, 35, for 3 years now, and I still do not understand the disrespect. Sometimes troubles in relationships are not talked about, but there are often clues. I met Laura Graham at my youngest sister's wedding. Laura was the sister of one of the groomsmen. Laura somehow latched onto me even though I had duties as a stand-in for my father. My parents had died in a fire in a hotel in Aruba while on a second honeymoon. The hotel was owned by a U.S. company, and the place was a fire trap. I was left in charge of my 2 younger sisters, Natalie and Leanne. Natalie was 13, and Leanne was 15. I was 19 at the time and living at home while attending a local college. We had gotten great legal advice from my father's business attorney, so we took the hotel company to court and promised a strong media blitz if they decided to play hardball. I had been named executor of the estate, which included the business that my dad had built. The business had major insurance policies on Mom and Dad as they were partners in the business. The settlement, the insurance, and the sale of the business ensured that the 3 of us would each be multimillionaires when we reached 21. The money also did other things such as pay off the small mortgage on the family home and buy cars for each of us. Each car was in the name of the individual trust. We had the home ownership papers changed to make our trusts equal owners in the house and land. I had the lawyers put all the rest of the money after paying all the bills into equal trust funds for each of us, and for the trust to provide income, but not a complete payout until 25. Then the trust would match the income of the beneficiary. I did not want my sisters to fall prey to gold diggers. The trusts paid for all educational expenses through post-grad work in college if the girls wanted it. They did and used it wisely. I had a full-ride scholarship separate from the trust that was structured to give me a reasonable stipend, and so my trust just was sitting there until I turned 21. I was attending the university in town, so I was at home when needed. Leanne was and is a genius and graduated from high school at 16, got a bachelor's at 19, and an MBA at 20. Natalie is no slouch in the brains department either. She waited until she was 17 to graduate high school. Then she proceeded to blow through college and graduated at 20 with 2 bachelor's and a master's. She got her doctorate in chemistry at 22 and immediately was given a teaching position at a nearby university. She is now a full professor and the head of the chemistry department. She also has 3 chemistry textbooks to her credit. Leanne met a great guy, Brian Donovan, and they married and have a couple of kids and a thriving accounting agency. Brian is a CPA, and Leanne is his CEO. It was at a then 22-year-old Natalie's wedding to Professor James Lawton, M.A., Ph.D., and a major egotist, general gold digger and total waste of space that I was supervising. She loved him, but I made sure she had an ironclad prenup. James just about had a stroke when he found out he could not get her money, but he did sign the prenup. I think he thought he would be able to get around the structures of the trust and the prenup. I told you, an egotistical a-hole. As I was a trustee for the two girls' trusts, it wasn't going to happen. It was while at the reception where I met Laura. I was greeting people as they were coming into the reception hall. She was a striking black-haired, brown-eyed beauty. She was also gracious and charming. After she found a seat, she joined me at the door. She volunteered to assist me in identifying assholes' friends and relatives. She stayed by my side all night whenever I was away from the head table. It would have been funny if I didn't enjoy it so much. I felt a connection right away. After the dinner, the dancing started, and other the dances with my sisters. I danced with Laura every dance I was on the floor. When we weren't dancing, we were sitting together talking. She was a newly minted high school teacher. She taught AP English and creative writing. She was also a successful writer of several romance novels. She also knew of my writings. She offhandedly said, "I'm impressed that a finance guy could be such a good writer." That comment got me a little bent out of shape with how she said that, and so I harshly said, "I'm sorry you think finance people wouldn't have the ability of imagination to be a writer of fiction. I will match my book sales to yours any day of the week. I also have an offer for a movie adaptation for 3 of my novels, and an offer for another movie if I expand one of my novellas. Perhaps romance novels will work out as well for you." Then I got up and went into the men's room to escape her until I could calm down. She was standing outside the restroom door when I came out. She was tearfully apologetic and said that she hadn't said what she wanted to say in the right way. I apologized for getting angry and said, "Let's just say that we are pleased with each other's writing success." "Okay, but I really am sorry for sounding like an egotistical snob. I already knew about your books. We have the same agent, and my publisher throws your numbers in my face to get me to write more salacious parts into my books. When I tell him that not my style, he gets upset. But my royalty checks keep coming in, and he always offers a new contract when I fulfill the current one. I'll talk to Jason Trent, our agent, and when you finish your next contract, you should have him put it out to other houses for bid." That is what I did when my last publisher's rep started to denigrate my writing. The publisher called and asked why I was shopping for a new publisher, so I told him. "I got a new rep, a bigger cut, and all of the copyrights and movies rights." I added, "I make a lot more per book, and now that I have the publisher's support, I am writing more. Do you think it will work? I have one more book to complete this contract. Let's talk to Jason together, and then we will know." Believe me, Jason knows how to work the system to get his clients more money, because the mercenary side of him loves to make himself more money. With that, we both laughed. The conversation went on to other things, then came back to writing. She told me she loved her classes and had some very gifted students that would be great writers if she could get them focused on writing. When I said, maybe writing is not their passion. I love finance, enjoy it when I tinker with some ideas for inventions, but writing is my passion. You just said you love teaching. Do you write as a sideline, like my financial work and tinkering is for me, or do you teach as a sideline for your writing? It was as if a light went on. I haven't explained that to my kids. That's a great insight. I need to convey to them that work is great, but that writing is also important, and if they have the passion for writing, they will find the time to do it. Thank you. Then she excitedly grabbed me and kissed me. Then she blushed the brightest red that I had ever seen a human turn. We exchanged phone information and agreed to meet with Jason ASAP. She left, and I stayed and supervised the cleanup. The next Monday, I called Jason and told him about my conversation with Laura Graham. He laughed and said, "I recently got a call from her publisher's rep. He wants to reduce her per-book royalty and require more books and different, more mature content." I told him that I would recommend that she change publishers. He was not pleased. "I will call Laura and see if we 3 can't work out a strategy to get her the same deal you got. She has slightly more books published, and her per-book sales are very close to yours, but right now, her royalty setup is only about 60% of what you get, and she does not own the copyrights." "Thanks, Jason. Call her and set it up. I will live with whatever time and day you set up. Dinner will be my treat. I hate to see anyone being steamrollered by the publishers." With that, we ended our conversation. I called Laura that evening and told her of my conversation. She told me that she had a conversation with Jason. She also told me that they had agreed to meet at the Outback the following Wednesday at 6 p.m. I agreed to be there. I told Laura with a slight smirk in my voice, "I know it's just an excuse to see me again. Well, for your information, I planned it so we would meet, and you would see my good side." I heard an almost musical laugh and a "you wish." Another laugh and an almost whispered, "See you Wednesday, you wonderful goof." The meeting went very well, and Jason started the bidding wars. It ended just as I had told Laura. She stayed with her publisher, got a different, more respectful rep, more money per book, and all of her copyrights, including movie rights. All of these changes almost doubled her writing income. Laura and I dated for many months, and after almost a year, I asked her to marry me. She said yes. We planned a spring wedding, so we had 9 months from the engagement to plan the wedding. As we were both financially well off, we had a prenup that protected both of our personal incomes. The only penalty clause was that Laura insisted on a $1 million payout to the injured party if the divorce was granted because of adultery. The guilty party would also pay all legal fees involved in the divorce. My family home was specifically exempted and protected. I had my trust buy out my sister's shares. I gave their trusts the money, much to Leanne's and Natalie's approval and Mr. Lawton's disapproval. Laura was on board with living in the family home, even though it was much more than 2 people needed. We got married the week of Easter, which matched her school's spring break. We went on a hiking tour of the Appalachian Trail for 4 days. After that, we returned and enjoyed a relaxing few days before the school session started back up. Things were great for the first 2 years. Then Laura and I decided to try to have children. Nothing seemed to work. Basal temp, strict calendar planning, nothing. But I did enjoy a lot of sex. After 9 months of trying, Laura was getting desperate. She started to make a lot of snide and hurtful comments about how I wasn't man enough to get her pregnant. She threatened to find someone who could. She convinced me to go with her to a fertility doctor. It turns out I am sterile. I had the mumps when I was 15, and the doctor thought that was probably the cause. Laura was devastated. It was so bad, and she was so bitchy that I told her I would agree to an annulment. Wrong move. I have never seen her so pissed. She went batshit crazy and started screaming obscenities at me and made a move like she was going to slap me. Then she accused me of wanting me to get rid of her. Her final rant was she was going to find someone who was a whole man and I could eat shit and die, and then she called me an a-hole. That pissed me off, but as I looked back I saw the annulment was a stupid statement, but it did not deserve her blow-up. Tuesday, I decided that cowardice was the best option. So I packed a few days' worth of clothes while she was at school and wrote her a note telling her why I was going. Laura, my love, you have been disrespecting me for several months. Then your last words of your latest rant were eat shit and die. A hole? Well, I won't be dying just yet, but I am leaving. It need not be permanent, but I will not be yelled at and cussed out for trying to ease your hurt. I do not want to lose you, but I know how much you want to have children. My suggestion of an annulment was so you could meet someone to father children with you. It may have been stupid, but it was not a sign that I don't love you. I will be out of contact while I am gone. I will check my email account and my voicemail on my cell at least once a day. If you want me back, let me know that way. If I don't hear from you by the weekend, Monday while you are in school, I will get the rest of my stuff, and we'll start divorce proceedings. If we divorce, you may stay in the house until the end of the school year. Because the trust owns the house, you will have to leave after the school year ends. As the reason for the divorce will not be adultery, we will enforce the prenup, but there will be no penalties. I know this sounds harsh, but I meant what I said when I suggested annulment. It was not to get rid of you, but to give you a chance to have children. I know it is not the same, but we might think about adoption. I love you with all my heart and only want you to be happy. Your loving husband, Kevin. I called Natalie and asked if I could spend a couple of days with her and James. She told me I was welcome, but James was not. She told me she would explain when I got there, and that she wanted the whole story. It was a 2-hour drive to her house. When I arrived, I got a strong hug and a tearful kiss. Natalie was a mess. She looked like a bag lady. She was in a ratty bathrobe and had an old sweatsuit underneath. She sobbed and blubbered so badly that I could not understand her. She was still my little sister, so I picked her up and took her into her house. I put her to bed with a strong shot of vodka and waited for her to go to sleep. I knew where everything was because I had been there a few times before, and James was an anal-retentive neat freak who was so organized that I would bet he knew how many sheets of toilet paper were left on each bathroom's roll. Natalie slept for a couple of hours. Meanwhile, I commandeered the guest room and put my stuff away. When she woke up, she told me about what was going on with James. It seems he was really pissed that he couldn't get her money. He bided his time, and when he saw his chance, he emptied their bank accounts and took off. He had been gone for a week when I called. I told Natalie that I would release some of her trust to replace the money if she needed it. She just laughed. You were right about the a-hole. All that was in the accounts was the last paychecks for each of us. I had sensed something going on, so I took out all but the minimum to keep the accounts open. He didn't notice, but he did wait until the paychecks would be in there. He got less than $5,000. I put the money in a safe I bought and put in my underwear drawer, a place where James would be afraid to go. I ended up with all of the money except about 10% of the savings. He tried to raid the trust, but you have that set up well. He got very frustrated, and that must have been when he planned to take off. He also said I was lousy on the voicemail message that he left me. Then she started to sniffle again. I held her and she calmed down. Once she was calm, she wanted to know what was going on with me. I told her the entire sorry story. As I was telling it, it sounded like a lame fairy tale, but I was hurt by Laura's rant. Natalie looked at me and said, "Kevin Lee Wallace, I knew I was in trouble when she used my full name. You are such a stupid man at times. I'm sure Laura wanted your child, not just any child." Then she piled on. "I thought that I was stupid about James, but you hurt a woman who loves you. She got mad because your suggestion seemed to indicate that you did not want her anymore. You go to bed tonight and think about that. I'm going to call her after supper and talk to her. If you were right, she won't care where you are, but I will bet you she wants you home tomorrow." We ate, and I turned my phone on, and there were no messages. I fired up my laptop and checked my email. No messages. I went to sleep. I had several very bad dreams. It was not a restful night. Over morning coffee, Natalie told me she talked to Laura. Laura was pissed and said I could stay away until hell freezes over. Then she would bring a blowtorch. "You, my dear loving brother, are in deep shit with your wife. You need to do some major but kissing if you want the marriage to continue." I said, "After you telling me that, I think I'll see a lawyer." I was mad because of her rant. Now she is continuing that rant. I don't want a divorce, but I guess I am going to get one. I apologized for my mistake, and she says, "Too bad, so sad. Go to hell. Next time you talk to her, tell her to be out of the house in 30 days, or I will have her evicted." I continued, "I know you are trying to help, but I will not be a whipping boy. She wants to be mad. Tell her to expect to be served as soon as I can contact a lawyer. I won't put you in the middle, so I will leave this afternoon. I won't tell you where I am going, so you won't have to lie to Laura about not knowing. You said I was stupid. Maybe I was, but I do not deserve the screaming banshee that bitch was when she cussed me out. I won't be hurt like that again. I know my thought of an annulment was really stupid, but I apologized. She hasn't." I left that afternoon and went to Chicago and rented a hotel suite on Lake Shore Doctor that overlooked Lake Michigan. I checked my phone and email. No messages. I called my publisher and asked for a Chicago-based lawyer. I did not tell them why. I called the office they recommended. I was told that they had an office in our home city and I should contact them. I finally decided to go back to the house and get more clothes. When I arrived back in town, I thought I would call and see if Laura was home. She shouldn't be, as it was midday on a Thursday. Surprise, a voice I recognized answered. I said, "Hi James, get the hell out of my house, because what you did to my sister means when I see you I will beat you as bad as I can without killing you. And if my cheating wife is there, she can leave with you. I am in town, so you have less than 10 minutes to escape." When I got to the house, no one was there. I called Laura's school and was told she quit and left about 5 minutes earlier, saying she got an emergency call and had to leave. I called Natalie. I told her that James and Laura were together running from me. She laughed. My next move was to call the local offices of the Chicago lawyers and set up an appointment. It was for the next day, Friday morning. I arrived at her office and Mrs. Anna Porter introduced herself. When I told her I wanted a divorce and to file under adultery, she asked for proof. I explained that I suspected she was with my brother-in-law and she left town with him. She said that I needed some other, better evidence. I told her I just wanted the pain over with, and if she wouldn't do it, I would find a lawyer who would. She took the case. As Laura was nowhere to be found, and James was gone too, Natalie filed for abandonment and I changed my petition to that too. A year later, they were both final. I still don't understand the disrespect, but she is gone now. My agent tells me she has missed the last 4 deadlines on her books and her publisher has canceled her contract. Life is a bitch and then you die. My sister is back in our family home because she got a new position that made her the dean of chemistry at the local university. We are each other's support structure. I am dating, and so is Natalie, but neither one is looking for permanent. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Please make sure the loan repayment is taken care of. While I was busy at work, an unexpected email appeared, and I quickly reached out to him in response. Jacob Conley began to explain, "Oh, sorry about that. I've fallen for someone else and decided to start a new life with her." Furthermore, he revealed his plan to take the luxury car recently purchased in my name with a loan. Despite my attempts to dissuade him, my husband ignored me, abruptly ended the call, and became unreachable. In the end, Jacob disappeared with his mistress, leaving behind a substantial debt. As a mother to our 10-year-old son, I never envisioned such an unfair situation. I found myself at a loss, unsure of what to do, my mind going blank. At 35 years old, my name is Alice and my husband Jacob is the same age. We were a family of 3, including our intelligent 10-year-old son Arlo. Arlo had displayed remarkable intelligence from a young age, reading papers on the computer and seeking my opinion on complex topics. In contrast, Jacob was unstable, never holding down a steady job. Despite my full-time job and concerns about our future, Jacob had recently maintained a stable income for 3 years. Lately, Jacob spoke of making memories as a family, leading us to decide on buying a $35,000 camper van. However, due to Jacob's inability to pass the finance company's loan review, I ended up taking the loan for the car. On the eagerly awaited delivery day of the camper van, I received an abrupt email from Jacob stating he would graciously take the delivered van since the loan was in my name, and I would handle the repayments. Confused, I called my husband immediately, only to hear him confess, "Well, I've fallen in love with another woman and decided to date her." I intended it to be just a flame, but it turned serious, so I'm thinking of starting over my life with her. Bye. He mentioned the divorce papers we had discussed during a previous fight, declared he would file them, and unilaterally ended the call. This exchange marked the first time I realized I had been betrayed by Jacob, a shocking blow. Subsequent attempts to contact him yielded no response. When I returned home from work and checked the drawer where the divorce papers should have been, they were already gone, leaving me burdened with a significant debt from a $35,000 car loan. Despite my repeated attempts to reach out to my husband through emails and calls, I never received a reply. Arlo, noticing my unusual behavior, came to check on me with concern after dinner. "Mom, what's wrong? You haven't been eating much lately. Are you okay?" Yeah, maybe I'm just tired." When people lie, they look up to the right. Lying is bad. I've noticed Dad hasn't been home for 3 days. Did something happen between you two?" Startled by Arlo's sharp words, I took a deep breath to calm myself, feeling that I could no longer hide the truth. I decided to tell Arlo everything. "Everything? I see. It's just like Dad to do something like that. Aren't you sad?" No, I kind of understood from how things were going. Arlo, seemingly foreseeing the future, appeared unconcerned about our parents' divorce. But I knew he must feel sad about it in his heart. While silently apologizing to Arlo in my mind, I worked desperately, trying not to think about the dreadful events. However, my body was honest, and gradually my health deteriorated. There was a training session planned at work that day, but I couldn't stand up and ended up squatting down. "Sorry, I can't stand up right now. I need to take a break." I heard my colleagues' voices full of concern, but I couldn't respond and collapsed. When I regained consciousness, I found myself in a hospital room. I received a diagnosis from the doctor that I needed detailed examinations, and I was admitted to the hospital. Alice thought, "I feel so pathetic. It's supposed to be just emotional stress." Looking at the IV drip in my arm and the white ceiling of the hospital room, tears naturally started to flow. At that moment, Arlo, who is usually calm, rushed into the room with an extremely worried look, prompting me to quickly wipe away my tears. "Mom, what happened? Is it serious? You're not going to die, right?" "Of course not. I wouldn't leave my dear son alone." That's good. Really, I was called by the school teacher and told that you were taken to the hospital." I was so shocked, my heart nearly stopped. Arlo, usually mature for his age, but he's still only 10. I felt a strong resolve to get better for his sake. But my condition was worse than I thought, and I was diagnosed with a serious illness. The doctor advised, "You should have surgery as soon as possible. Please make a decision quickly." Following the doctor's advice, I underwent surgery, and by the time I was discharged, it had been a month since Jacob had left. When I returned home and opened the mailbox, I found a demand letter for the car loan payment. Alice thought the repayment should have been automatically deducted from my account. In panic, I checked the account balance with my cash card, and the balance, originally $20,000, was now only $33.90. Alice thought, Jacob did this. I want to ask him to return the money, but I can't contact him. What should I do? Since I don't have the camper van, I can't sell it. After Jacob left, everything seemed to be going in a bad direction, and my mood sank deeper. Seeing me saddened by my series of misfortunes, Arlo put his hand on my forehead. You look pale. Are you feeling sick again? You don't seem to have a fever though. I'm fine physically, but you see, your father not only took the car, but also all the money we had saved, but I can't work due to my physical condition, and now we have no money. I'm at a loss. I see. Then I'll deliver newspapers, and I'll search the internet to see if there's any work I can do. Encouraged by my 10-year-old son, I told myself that it wasn't the time to be down. Sorry for worrying you. I can't afford to be weak. I'll change my mindset and try to do whatever I can, I said, smiling at him. Arlo also smiled back and then said something unexpected. Let's plan how to get the car back from Dad. How can we do that? The camper van is in your name, right? Yes, but what about it? Then maybe we can. Arlo suggested an idea that I couldn't even imagine. I had never thought such an idea could exist. Also, I have no idea where your father is. Then let's check on my phone. A month ago, once when we went hiking as a family, surprisingly, Arlo, who is usually very reliable, felt lost. At that time, we bought a kid's cell phone on suggestion and installed the GPS app on it, which both Jacob and I could access. With this app, I can see where Dad is in real time, and he's been moving around a lot. Oh, is that so? But what if we find him, and he just says something vague and escapes again? As I pondered this, Arlo smiled and made an intriguing suggestion. Don't worry. I've already taken precautions. What did you just say? To my astonishment, Arlo had acted independently while I was in the hospital, achieving something unbelievable. I thought I can't believe such a smart child came from me. Understanding Arlo's words, I was simply amazed. He had even caught wind of Jacob's mistress. All right, let's teach Dad, who betrayed us, a lesson. Okay, let's start the plan right away. Together, my son and I prepared for that moment. Alice thought, with Arlo by my side, I'm invincible. Bring it on, anywhere, anytime. 3 days later, my phone rang. Ah, it's me. Please, I need your help. Oh, who might this be? Don't play dumb. It's your husband, obviously. I'm being questioned by the police about you. At this rate, they might ask me to come to the police station voluntarily. Help me out. Oh, is that so? Just wait a moment. Then I immediately went with my son to where Jacob was, and to my surprise, it was a forest park near our house where camping was possible. Jacob was being questioned by the police in front of his car, looking bewildered, feeling pathetic. I sighed and told the police we needed to have a talk as a couple and asked them to leave for a while. At that time, Jacob seemed uncomfortable being watched by the people around us and urged Arlo and me to get into the car. Inside the car, Jacob's mistress was sitting cross-legged, glaring at us, but that was no longer important. Sorry about that. Thanks for coming, but why did the police suddenly show up at my place? I don't get it. That's because I filed a report about the missing camper van. What? Why would you do that? It's obvious, isn't it? My car was stolen. Jacob, foolishly thinking that actions between spouses can't be criminal, was saying nonsensical things, but the world isn't that naive, you know. You filed for divorce, remember? Forgot? So we are strangers now, and driving a stranger's car without permission, that's a crime. Arlo figured all this out, typical, sharp as ever. But I didn't steal the car. I just borrowed it for a bit. Oh, is that so? Well, I'd like to use my car now, so could you return it? That would be really helpful. As I reached out my hand asking Jacob to return the keys, he reluctantly handed them over. After confirming it was returned, Arlo quietly started talking. Hey, why did you abandon your family and choose to play around with this woman? Caught off guard by his son's unexpected question, Jacob was flustered and awkwardly scratched his head. Seeing this, Jacob's mistress chuckled smugly and started talking. "It's because I'm more attractive than your mother. Look at me, you can see it, right?" He fell head over heels for me and decided to leave his family. "Quiet. I didn't ask you, old lady." "Dad, you answer." Grace was silenced by Arlo's stern tone, but Jacob remained quiet. "If you can't explain, that's fine. I'll just have the police come back and arrest you." "Wait, hold on." Okay, I'll talk." Grace, it turns out, joined Jacob's company 3 months ago. They were attracted to each other and became involved at the welcome party for new employees. Later, it was discovered that Grace was pregnant, and Jacob decided to start a new life with her, leaving us behind. "Why did you take the camper van?" "I quit my job and thought about selling the car for money." "But it seems like you were using it quite a bit, weren't you?" "I thought it was a waste to sell it right away, so we decided to go on a trip." "Wait, how do you know all this?" "Remember when Arlo got lost? After that, as a precaution, we bought him a kid's cell phone and installed the GPS app. Did you forget? We installed it on your phone too, so I knew where you were all this time." By the way, I later found out from Arlo that he had pretended to get lost during our family hike. Because he wanted a cell phone, I was amazed at Arlo's ability to think and act so strategically. I suspected something was off with Dad, so I came up with this plan to monitor his actions. "You really are a terrifying child. I will never become an adult like you, Dad, who betrays important people without a second thought." Jacob, faced with the hard truth Arlo told, was a pitiful adult, unable to offer any rebuttal. In contrast, seeing Arlo, only 10 but able to think and speak his mind firmly, gave me a sense of strength. As a mother, I felt I couldn't lose, especially in settling things properly. "Also, return the $20,000 you withdrew from my account right now. That was our joint property as a couple. I don't have to return it." "No, it's not that. The money was what I saved little by little since I was single. After all, you always quit your jobs midway, so we hardly ever saved money together, did we?" I was appalled to hear that the $20,000 had been squandered by Jacob and his mistress. It was the moment I felt relieved about divorcing him. "So that's how it is. But if you stole and used the car and my money, that's going to be a serious crime." "What?" "I just sent the police away, so it's not their business anymore, right?" "I only said we would talk. I have no intention of withdrawing the complaint." "I must add the theft of my money to the report. Mom, should I call the police now?" "I can do it with just one button on my phone." Grace, Jacob's mistress, had been watching our conversation but quickly tried to get out of the camper van. At that moment, she let out a scream that echoed around. The reason was that outside the car door, Grace's parents were standing there, faces red with anger, about to explode in fury. Startled, she stepped back as her parents yelled at her. "Ah, I'm sorry. Don't be so angry." "But why are you here, Mom and Dad? I called your parents beforehand." "What? Why?" The truth was, during my hospital stay, Arlo had visited Jacob's office and tearfully told them, "My dad left the house with a woman we don't know, and my mom collapsed." Seeing Arlo's sorrowful and frail state, the people at Jacob's office suspected Grace, who had left the company with Jacob, and gave Arlo her parents' address. Jacob and Grace had been overly friendly at the office, and there were photos showing them together at the welcome party for new employees, looking like a couple. After learning from the office people that you commuted from your parents' house, Grace's parents were standing there, faces red with anger. "I went there with your photo, and your parents came out when I visited. Then I told them everything that had happened. So today, I contacted Grace's parents and asked them to wait nearby for a while." "How could you do this to me?" "The worst. I don't want to hear that from you. That's my line. By the way, your stomach seems quite big. When is the baby due?" "In 3 months." "What? Wait a minute, that doesn't add up with when you met my husband." You two met only 3 months ago. What's going on? It's not time for the baby to be born yet. Jacob, hearing this for the first time, stared at Grace, eyes wide. Wait, what does that mean? Are you stupid? Don't you get it? It takes about 9 months from conception to birth, which means the child she's carrying isn't yours. You're so foolish. What do you mean, Grace? Have you been deceiving me? Ah, I almost got away with it. Can't help it now that I'm caught. You're so naive, you can't see through lies at all. Really, a fool. Don't mock me. My whole life is ruined because of you. What were you thinking? Grace and Jacob started an ugly argument, but nobody intervened, letting them have it out. Meanwhile, we contacted the police again to explain the situation. As it began to get dark, the forest park was brightly lit by the red lights of the police cars. No, really, I was wrong. I was truly wrong. I'm sorry. I'll work hard and never cheat again, so please just don't arrest me. Dad, people don't change that easily, especially lazy people like you. Exactly. Arlo's right. I can't trust you at all. Reflect on your actions and pay for your crimes at the police station. If I get arrested, I won't be able to pay back the money. Is that okay with you? I don't mind. Pay me back after you've atoned for your sins. Take your time. Don't worry, I've already found you a place to work. Let's see, there's Arlo's child support, plus the $220,000 you stole from me. I'm not sure how much it will all add up to, but you'll work and pay it all back. I had one last thing to say to Grace, the mistress. You might think you're just an onlooker, but don't forget, you're an accomplice to Jacob's theft. Be prepared for that. When I told them that Grace would have to pay if Jacob couldn't return the stolen money, she shivered in fear. Grace asked her parents for help, but they refused, saying, "We disown a daughter who causes trouble for others." Thus, Jacob and Grace were taken away in a police car together. Thanks to Arlo's smart strategy, we were able to punish Jacob and his mistress, Grace. Though they were released from detention soon after, they faced a hefty payment to me through a lawyer. I claimed $20,000 in damages. Additionally, I made Jacob agree to pay $500 a month in child support for Arlo. I introduced Jacob to a subcontracting factory of the company I work for. The support and other charges I claimed from Jacob would be deducted from his salary and paid into my account. I also sold the camper van and was freed from the auto loan. Since then, my health has improved remarkably, and I am now energetic, committed to my job. Arlo has been actively helping with household chores and errands. I want to keep moving forward strongly so that Arlo can pursue the path he loves without giving up.
Title: At the Black Tie Ball, I found a necklace with my wife's initials in another man's pocket. The truth was more horrifying than I imagined. The chandelier sparkled above like a cascade of diamonds, casting a golden glow across the grand ballroom of the Astoria Hotel in New York City. It was a black tie charity gala, the kind where Manhattan's elite gathered to sip champagne and flaunt their designer ensembles. Every detail was meticulously curated. The soft hum of a live jazz band, the faint clinking of crystal glasses, and the whispers of billion-dollar deals exchanged between tuxedo-clad tycoons. Amid this sea of opulence stood James Carter, a devoted husband in his early 40s, adjusting his bow tie while glancing at his wife, Emily. She was the picture of elegance, draped in a midnight blue gown that shimmered with every step. Her usual warmth, however, seemed absent, replaced by a distant air that James couldn't ignore. Her eyes darted around the room as if searching for someone or something. As James tried to shake off his unease, he excused himself from a small circle of acquaintances and headed toward the bar. That's when he noticed it, a glimmer of gold peeking out from the pocket of a man standing nearby. At first, it seemed like an ordinary piece of jewelry, but then James's gaze sharpened. The necklace bore the unmistakable engraving, E.C., his wife's initials. A chill ran down his spine as he realized the man wasn't just any guest. He was someone Emily had exchanged fleeting glances with earlier in the evening. James's heart raced, his mind struggling to piece together what he was seeing. Why would another man have a necklace with his wife's initials? And why was Emily avoiding eye contact whenever the man appeared within view? The glamour of the ball faded into the background as James's focus narrowed on the mystery before him. What started as a luxurious evening now felt like the opening scene of a twisted drama. James Carter couldn't shake the unsettling sight of the necklace engraved with his wife Emily's initials. The gilded allure of the Astoria's grand ballroom seemed to blur as his focus narrowed on the man in the sharp black tuxedo. The stranger, whose confident demeanor exuded wealth and familiarity with the high society crowd, moved with calculated ease through the party. James felt the first pangs of doubt clawing at his mind. Was he reading too much into this? Or had he stumbled upon something that could shatter the foundation of his marriage? His curiosity outweighed his hesitation. James decided not to confront Emily, at least not yet. Instead, he discreetly kept an eye on the man, trailing him as inconspicuously as possible through the ballroom. Every interaction, every gesture seemed deliberate. James noticed how Emily's eyes flickered toward the man whenever she thought no one was looking. Her subtle, almost imperceptible nod in his direction confirmed James's worst fears. There was some connection between them. But what? The man, unaware of James's watchful eye, stopped at the bar, chatting with a small group. James took a deep breath, his mind racing through the fragments of interactions he had observed earlier. Was this the same man who had been overly familiar with Emily at a charity gala last spring? The memory felt sharper now, a lingering handshake, a shared laugh too intimate for comfort. The pieces were beginning to align, forming a picture James wasn't ready to accept. Finally, James's patience snapped. Timing his move carefully, he approached the man just as he broke away from the group, heading toward the quieter terrace outside. The crisp evening air greeted them as James stepped into the dimly lit space, his heart pounding in his chest. "Excuse me," James began, his voice firm but measured. The man turned, clearly surprised by the sudden confrontation. James wasted no time. "That necklace," he said, pointing subtly to the pocket where he had seen it earlier. "Where did you get it?" For a moment, the man's confident facade faltered. His eyes darted to the pocket and then back to James, calculating his response. A forced smile crept across his face as he replied, "Oh, this? It's just a souvenir, something I picked up years ago." The answer was as vague as it was unconvincing. James's jaw tightened. The man's attempt to downplay the significance of the necklace only fueled James's suspicion. Something was deeply wrong, and James knew he was now entangled in a mystery far more personal and dangerous than he had imagined. James Carter couldn't shake the unsettling sight of the necklace engraved with his wife Emily's initials. The gilded allure of the Astoria's grand ballroom seemed to blur as his focus narrowed on the man in the sharp black tuxedo. The stranger, whose confident demeanor exuded wealth and familiarity with the high society crowd, moved with calculated ease through the party. James felt the first pangs of doubt clawing at his mind. Was he reading too much into this? Or had he stumbled upon something that could shatter the foundation of his marriage? His curiosity outweighed his hesitation. James decided not to confront Emily, at least not yet. Instead, he discreetly kept an eye on the man, trailing him as inconspicuously as possible through the ballroom. Every interaction, every gesture seemed deliberate. James noticed how Emily's eyes flickered toward the man whenever she thought no one was looking. Her subtle, almost imperceptible nod in his direction confirmed James's worst fears. There was some connection between them. But what? The man, unaware of James's watchful eye, stopped at the bar, chatting with a small group. James took a deep breath, his mind racing through the fragments of interactions he had observed earlier. Was this the same man who had been overly familiar with Emily at a charity gala last spring? The memory felt sharper now, a lingering handshake, a shared laugh too intimate for comfort. The pieces were beginning to align, forming a picture James wasn't ready to accept. Finally, James's patience snapped. Timing his move carefully, he approached the man just as he broke away from the group, heading toward the quieter terrace outside. The crisp evening air greeted them as James stepped into the dimly lit space, his heart pounding in his chest. "Excuse me?" James began, his voice firm but measured. The man turned, clearly surprised by the sudden confrontation. James wasted no time. "That necklace," he said, pointing subtly to the pocket where he had seen it earlier. "Where did you get it?" For a moment, the man's confident facade faltered. His eyes darted to the pocket and then back to James, calculating his response. A forced smile crept across his face as he replied, "Oh, this? It's just a souvenir, something I picked up years ago." The answer was as vague as it was unconvincing. James's jaw tightened. The man's attempt to downplay the significance of the necklace only fueled James's suspicion. Something was deeply wrong, and James knew he was now entangled in a mystery far more personal and dangerous than he had imagined. James Carter stood frozen, the weight of Emily's revelations pressing down on him like an iron vice. The echoes of her confession rang in his ears, drowning out the lively hum of the gala. Just hours ago, he had thought he knew everything about the woman he had shared his life with, the love of his life, the mother of their 2 children. But now, every moment of their marriage seemed tainted, every shared laugh a cruel illusion. Betrayal clawed at James's heart, mingling with a deep, gnawing anger. How could she have hidden something so monumental? He had always prided himself on being the kind of husband Emily could trust. But now, he questioned whether he had ever truly known her. Confusion and doubt seeped into his thoughts. Was their entire marriage built on lies? Had Emily ever truly loved him, or had he merely been a convenient escape from her past? As they returned home that night, the silence in the car was deafening. Emily sat beside him, her hands trembling in her lap, her eyes red and swollen from crying. James couldn't bring himself to speak. Every word he thought of seemed inadequate to express the storm of emotions raging within him. Back at their Upper East Side apartment, the confrontation continued. "Why didn't you tell me?" James finally demanded, his voice trembling with a mix of fury and despair. Emily broke down again, her words spilling out between sobs. "I was terrified, James," she confessed. "Terrified of losing you, of losing everything we've built together. I thought if I could just bury it, if I could pretend it never happened, it would all go away. But I was wrong." Her voice cracked as she admitted the truth she had been avoiding. "I've been living in fear for years. Every day I've waited for the past to catch up with me, and tonight, it finally did." James couldn't hold back any longer. "And what about me, Emily? What about us? Did you ever think about how this would destroy us? How it would destroy me?" Her silence was answer enough. The once perfect marriage they had projected to the world was now in shambles, irreparably broken by the weight of secrets too heavy to bear. Trust, a foundation they had spent years building, was now a distant memory, reduced to rubble by the harsh reality of Emily's deception. As James sat alone in their living room later that night, the events of the evening replayed in his mind. He felt a hollow ache, a sense of loss, not just for the woman he thought Emily was, but for the life they had built together. The consequences of Emily's hidden life were no longer just her burden. They were now James's as well. And as much as he wanted to turn back time, to pretend this night had never happened, he knew there was no escaping the truth. Their lives would never be the the same again. The events of the gala refused to leave James Carter's mind, haunting him with unanswered questions and a gnawing sense of dread. Emily's confession had shaken him to his core, but something about her story felt incomplete. The way she described her connection to the man, the shared secret, the unspoken guilt, it all hinted at a truth far darker than she had admitted. James knew he couldn't let it rest. He needed closure, even if it meant confronting the man once more. A week later, James tracked the man down to an upscale cafe in Midtown Manhattan, a place discreet enough for the wealthy to handle their affairs away from prying eyes. As James entered, the man looked up from his coffee, his expression shifting from mild surprise to guarded indifference. "Mr. Carter," the man said, his tone measured, as though he had been expecting this meeting. James didn't waste time with pleasantries. He sat down across from him, his gaze steady. "I want the truth. All of it. No more games, no more cryptic answers. What happened between you and my wife?" The man leaned back in his chair, studying James for a moment before responding. "I told her this would happen," he said with a faint, almost pitying smile. "Secrets have a way of catching up, don't they?" James's patience snapped. "I don't care about your riddles. I deserve to know the truth. What really happened?" The man sighed, as if burdened by the weight of the story he was about to tell. "Emily wasn't just an accomplice," he began, his voice low but firm. "She was the mastermind. Years ago, we worked together on a scheme, a financial fraud that ruined lives. It wasn't just numbers on a screen, James. People lost their homes, their livelihoods. One man even took his own life." James felt the air leave his lungs. He had prepared himself for something bad. But this was beyond anything he had imagined. "And you? What's your role in all this?" "I was her partner," the man admitted, his expression unflinching. "But when things started to unravel, I took the fall. She walked away clean, started a new life. You, the kids, the picture-perfect family. And I let her, because I thought it was over." James's mind raced as he tried to process the revelation. The woman he had married, the mother of his children, had orchestrated a scheme that destroyed lives. And yet, she had managed to hide it all, creating a facade of innocence and normalcy. "Why come back now?" James demanded, his voice shaking. The man's eyes hardened. "Because I've spent years paying for her sins while she lived free. She owes me, and I'm here to collect." James sat in stunned silence, the weight of the truth pressing down on him. The horrifying reality was that Emily's past wasn't just a dark secret, it was a ticking time bomb that threatened to destroy everything they had built. As James left the cafe, his mind swirled with conflicting emotions: anger, betrayal, despair. But beneath it all, a grim determination began to take shape. If Emily's past was going to tear their lives apart, James needed to decide. Would he protect her for the sake of their family, or would he let the truth come to light, no matter the cost? James Carter left the cafe and stepped into the cold Manhattan night, his thoughts swirling with confusion, anger, and despair. The dazzling lights of the city seemed to mock the darkness within him. Just a week ago, he had been a man secure in his life, his marriage, and his understanding of the woman he loved. Now every moment spent with Emily felt like a lie, every memory tainted by the horrifying truths he had uncovered. He replayed the events of the black tie ball in his mind, the elegance of the evening, the necklace in another man's pocket, and Emily's tearful confession. The woman he had thought he knew was a stranger, her past a labyrinth of secrets and betrayals he could scarcely fathom. Yet even in the face of her deception, James felt a strange pull, a lingering thread of love that refused to snap. What haunted him most was not just Emily's hidden life, but his own reaction to it. Was he angry because she had lied? Or because she had forced him to see her as flawed, human, and deeply complex? Could he forgive her, knowing the depths of her betrayal, or would this fracture be the end of their carefully constructed life together? As James entered the apartment, the weight of his decision pressed down on him. Emily was sitting in the living room, her face pale, her eyes filled with apprehension. She looked up as he walked in, her lips parting as if to speak, but he raised a hand, stopping her. "I don't know what to do," James admitted, his voice heavy with emotion. "I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't even know if I want to." Emily's tears returned, but she said nothing, as if understanding that words could no longer bridge the chasm between them. James stood there for a long moment, torn between his anger and the faintest glimmer of hope that their marriage could somehow survive. Finally, he turned and walked toward the bedroom, leaving Emily alone in the silence of their shared pain. As he closed the door behind him, James felt the weight of his uncertainty. Could he let go of the life they had built? Could he ever trust her again? Or was there a chance, a fragile, improbable chance, that they could rebuild from the wreckage? The answers eluded him, leaving the future as open and uncertain as the night sky beyond their window. Thank you for being a part of this story with me. If it moved you, please give the video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to Narrative Stories. I've noticed many of you who enjoy these stories aren't subscribed yet by subscribing. You're not just following channel. You're becoming part of a community that values deep, meaningful storytelling. Let's continue exploring these heartfelt journeys together. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you won't miss our next story.
Luca Müller, 42, a respected architect from Berlin, dedicated to his family and career. He is deeply committed to his work, which often consumes his time, but he prides himself on being a good father and husband. Though quiet and reflective, Luca is sharp and discerning, always noticing the little details. Lately, he's been feeling a growing distance from his wife, but has attributed it to the pressures of their respective careers. Emilia Müller, 38, originally from Milan. Emilia is a successful project manager at a prestigious tech firm in Munich. She's known for her beauty, sharp intelligence, and the way she effortlessly commands a room. Over the last few years, as her career has soared, her connection with Luca has grown strained. Though she loves her husband, she's found herself drawn to the attention and power of others, particularly her boss. Emilia is a woman at a crossroads, torn between her responsibilities and the thrill of temptation. Alexander Weber, 50. The CEO of the tech firm Emilia works for, Alexander is a powerful, commanding figure in the business world. His reputation for ruthless business tactics is matched only by his charm and charisma. Married 3 times, Alexander is no stranger to scandals. He's accustomed to getting what he wants, and recently, his attentions have been focused on Emilia. Alexander sees himself as invincible, unaware of the consequences that are soon to catch up with him. Luca Müller hadn't always been the type of man to question his wife's loyalty. Their relationship had always been built on mutual respect, deep love, and shared dreams. He and Emilia met in their late 20s at a design conference in Paris, both enamored with the creativity and ambition the other exuded. Luca, at the time, was an up-and-coming architect, and Emilia, a freshly graduated project manager with dreams of conquering the corporate world. Their love story had been one for the ages, fast, passionate, and seemingly unbreakable. Over the years, Luca had worked tirelessly to build his career, becoming one of the most sought-after architects in Berlin. His dedication meant long hours in the studio, but Emilia had always been supportive, understanding that this was the life they had chosen. As her own career began to flourish in the fast-paced tech industry, their lives became a whirlwind of business meetings, work dinners, and international travel. But with success came distance. Luca began to notice subtle changes in Emilia. The once lively conversations at the dinner table had been replaced by silence. Her phone seemed to buzz more frequently, and she often came home late, citing work emergencies. She looked at him less, spent more time in front of the mirror before heading to work, and their once intimate evenings were now filled with distant goodnights. The turning point came when Amelia's boss, Alexander Weber, entered the picture. Amelia had spoken of him in passing before, a brilliant but demanding leader who often pushed his employees to the limit. Weber had a reputation in the industry for being ruthless and unyielding, but he was also charismatic and knew how to charm those around him. Luca didn't think much of it initially, assuming it was simply part of Amelia's demanding job. But as time passed, Alexander's name came up more often. He was the one Amelia was constantly texting. He was the one calling late at night for work advice. And, as Luca discovered, he was the one Amelia had been meeting for after-work drinks. Still, Luca chose to trust his wife, convincing himself that it was nothing more than professional camaraderie. After all, Amelia had always been faithful, hadn't she? The company holiday party. The company's holiday party was held in Munich at one of the city's most luxurious hotels. Amelia had invited Luca weeks in advance, but he was hesitant. He never enjoyed these corporate gatherings, fake smiles, shallow conversations, and the ever-looming feeling that he didn't quite fit into Amelia's world anymore. However, Amelia insisted, almost uncharacteristically eager for him to attend. She had been working tirelessly on an important project for months, and this was her chance to celebrate with her colleagues. "It'll be good for you to meet everyone," she had said with a bright smile. "Plus, I want to show you off. You're my talented architect husband." Her charm worked, and Luca reluctantly agreed. The party was grand, just as he had imagined. Lavish decorations, soft jazz music playing in the background, and the scent of expensive perfume and cologne hanging in the air. As they entered the ballroom, Luca couldn't help but feel slightly out of place among the tech moguls and their glamorous spouses. Amelia, on the other hand, was in her element. She floated through the crowd effortlessly, greeting colleagues and clients with an easy grace. Luca watched her from a distance, admiring how beautiful she looked in her emerald green dress. Luca watched her from a distance, admiring how beautiful she looked in her emerald green dress, her dark hair cascading down her shoulders. But something was off. Her smiles seemed a little too forced, her laughter too exaggerated. There was a tension in the air that Luca couldn't quite put his finger on. As the night wore on, Luca began to notice Amelia's interactions with Alexander Weber. At first, it was subtle, a lingering glance here, a soft laugh there, but as the champagne flowed, their proximity grew. Alexander's hand would find its way to Amelia's back as they talked, their heads bending close together in whispered conversations. Luca's stomach tightened. He tried to convince himself that it was all innocent. Amelia was simply being friendly with her boss, wasn't she? He excused himself to the bar, ordering a stiff drink to calm his nerves. But the unease gnawed at him, a growing suspicion that he couldn't shake. It was then that he overheard snippets of a conversation between two of Amelia's colleagues. "I mean, it's obvious, right?" one woman whispered to the other. "Everyone knows what's going on between Amelia and Weber. They've been spending so much time together lately. It's practically written all over her face." Luca's heart dropped, his hands clenched around his glass, the room suddenly feeling suffocating. Could it be true? Could Amelia really be involved with her boss? He had to know. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Luca decided to follow his instincts. He had noticed Amelia and Alexander slipping away from the main ballroom earlier, heading toward the terrace. The terrace was secluded, with a stunning view of the snow-covered city below. It was a romantic spot, one that Luca had visited with Amelia many times before on their trips to Munich. His heart pounded in his chest as he approached the terrace doors, each step feeling heavier than the last. He could hear faint voices, the sound of laughter, and then silence. Pushing the door open slightly, Luca peeked out, his worst fears coming to life before his eyes. There, under the soft glow of the string lights, was Amelia, Her back was turned to him, but he recognized her immediately. The way her dress shimmered in the moonlight, the way her hair fell in soft waves, and standing in front of her, with his hand resting on her waist, was Alexander Weber. Luca's breath caught in his throat as he watched them, unable to move. They were too close, far too close for it to be just a friendly conversation. Emilia's face was flushed, her eyes locked onto Alexander's. And then, before Luca could process what was happening, she leaned in. The kiss was soft, brief, but it was enough. Enough to shatter everything Luca had believed in. His world crumbled around him as he watched his wife, the woman he had loved and trusted for so many years, share an intimate moment with another man. Time seemed to stand still. Luca felt numb, his mind racing, as he struggled to comprehend the betrayal unfolding before him. He had to leave, had to get away before he lost control. Without making a sound, he turned and walked back into the ballroom, his heart heavy with the weight of what he had just witnessed. Luca spent the next few days in a haze, unable to confront Emilia. He needed time to think, to process what he had seen. Emilia, oblivious to his discovery, continued on as if nothing had changed. She was cheerful, affectionate even, as if trying to make up for the distance that had grown between them over the past few months. But Luca couldn't bring himself to meet her gaze. One evening, as they sat at the dinner table in their Berlin apartment, Luca finally broke his silence. "I saw you," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Emilia froze, her fork hovering in midair. "What do you mean?" she asked, her tone cautious. "At the party," Luca continued, his eyes fixed on his plate. "With Alexander, I saw everything." The color drained from Emilia's face as the weight of his words sank in. She set her fork down slowly, her hands trembling. "Luca, don't," he interrupted, his voice firmer now. "Don't lie to me, Emilia. I know what I saw." Tears welled up in Emilia's eyes as she looked at him, her guilt finally catching up to her. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking. "It was a mistake. I never meant for this to happen." Luca's heart ached as he listened to her, the pain of her betrayal cutting deep. "Why?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "Why him? Why now?" Emilia wiped away her tears, struggling to find the words. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice filled with regret. "I was lonely. You've been so busy with work, and She trailed off, unable to finish. Luca looked at her, his eyes filled with sorrow. "I was busy because I thought we were building a life together," he said softly. "I thought we were a team." Emilia broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. "I'm so sorry, Luca. I never wanted to." Eventually, Luca made the difficult decision to leave. It wasn't easy. There were tears, apologies, and moments of hope. But in the end, he knew that their relationship would never be the same. They parted ways amicably, both knowing that their love had been irreparably damaged. As Luca packed his bags and walked out of their shared apartment for the last time, he felt a sense of closure. He had loved Emilia deeply, but sometimes love wasn't enough. The betrayal had left a scar that would take time to heal. But Luca knew that he would eventually find peace. Looking out at the snowy streets of Berlin, Luca took a deep breath and walked forward, ready to start a new chapter in his life. Thank you for watching. If you have any thoughts, questions, or comments about this story, feel free to leave them below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more compelling tales.